recognise me?" "The voice," replied Carrados. "It took me back to that little smoke dried attic den of yours, where we..." "My God!" exclaimed Carlyle bitterly. "Don't remind me of what we were going to do in those days." He looked round the well furnished, handsome room, and recalled other signs of wealth that he had noticed. "At all events, you seem fairly comfortable, Wynn." "I am alternately envied and pitied," replied Carrados, with a placid tolerance of circumstance that seemed characteristic of him. "Still, as you say, I am fairly comfortable." "Envied I can understand. But why are you pitied?" "Because I am blind," was the tranquil reply. "Blind!" exclaimed Mr. Carlyle, using his own eyes superlatively. "Do you mean literally blind?" "Literally. I was riding along a bridle path through a wood about a dozen years ago with a friend. He was in front. At one point a twig sprang back. You know how easily a thing like that happens. It just flicked my eye. Nothing to think twice about." "And that blinded you?" "Yes, ultimately. It's called amaurosis." "I can scarcely believe it. You seem so sure and self reliant. Your eyes are full of expression, only a little quieter than they used to be. I believe you were typing when I came. Aren't you having me?" "You miss the dog and the stick?" smiled Carrados. "No, it's a fact." "What an awful affliction for you, Max. You were always such an impulsive, reckless sort of fellow, never quiet. You must miss such a fearful lot." "Has anyone else recognised you?" asked Carrados quietly. "Ah, that was the voice, you said," replied Carlyle. "Yes, but other people hear the voice as well. Only I had no blundering, self confident eyes to be hoodwinked." "That's a rum way of putting it," said Carlyle. "Are your ears never hoodwinked, may I ask?" "Not now. Nor my fingers. Nor any of my other senses that have to look out for themselves." "Well, well," murmured Mr. Carlyle, cut short in his sympathetic emotions. "I'm glad you take it so well. Of course, if you find it an advantage to be blind, old man..." He stopped and reddened. "I beg your pardon," he concluded stiffly. "Not an advantage, perhaps," replied the other thoughtfully. "Still it has its compensations that one might not think of. A new world to explore, new experiences, new powers awakening, strange new perceptions, life in the fourth dimension. But why do you beg my pardon, Louis?" "I'm an ex solicitor, struck off in connection with the falsifying of a trust account, Mr. Carrados," replied Carlyle, rising. "Sit down, Louis," said Carrados suavely. His face, even his incredibly living eyes, beamed placid good nature. "The chair on which you will sit, the roof above you, all the comfortable surroundings to which you have so amiably alluded, are the direct result of falsifying a trust account. But do I call you Mr. Carlyle in consequence? Certainly not, Louis." "I did not falsify the account," cried Carlyle hotly. He sat down, however, and added more quietly: "But why do I tell you all this? I've never spoken of it before." "Blindness invites confidence," replied Carrados. "We are out of the running. Human rivalry ceases to exist. Besides, why shouldn't you? In my case the account was falsified." "Of course that's all bunkum, Max," commented Carlyle. "Still, I appreciate your motive." "Practically everything I possess was left to me by an American cousin, on the condition that I took the name of Carrados. He made his fortune by an ingenious conspiracy of doctoring the crop reports and unloading favourably in consequence, and I need hardly remind you that the receiver is equally guilty with the thief." "But twice as safe. I know something of that, Max. Have you any idea what my business is?" "You shall tell me," replied Carrados. "I run a private inquiry agency. When I lost my profession I had to do something for a living. This occurred. I dropped my name, changed my appearance and opened an office. I knew the legal side down to the ground, and I got a retired Scotland Yard man to organise the outside work." "Excellent!" cried Carrados. "Do you unearth many murders?" "No," admitted Mr. Carlyle. "Our business lies mostly on the conventional lines among divorce and defalcation." "That's a pity," remarked Carrados. Do you know, Louis, I always had a secret ambition to be a detective myself. I have even thought lately that I might still be able to do something at it if the chance came my way. That makes you smile?" "Well, certainly the idea." "Yes, the idea of a blind detective. The blind tracking the alert." "Of course, as you say, certain facilities are no doubt quickened," Mr. Carlyle hastened to add considerately. "But seriously, with the exception of an artist, I don't suppose there is any man who is more utterly dependent on his eyes." Whatever opinion Carrados might have held privately, his genial exterior did not betray a shadow of dissent. For a full minute he continued to smoke, as though he derived an actual visual enjoyment from the blue sprays that travelled and dispersed across the room. He had already placed before his visitor a box containing cigars of a brand which that gentleman keenly appreciated but generally regarded as unattainable, and the matter of fact ease and certainty with which the blind man had brought the box and put it before him had sent a questioning flicker through Carlyle's mind. "You used to be rather fond of art yourself, Louis," he remarked presently. "Give me your opinion of my latest purchase, the bronze lion on the cabinet there." Then, as Carlyle's gaze went about the room, he added quickly: "No, not that cabinet. The one on your left." Carlyle shot a sharp glance at his host as he got up, but Carrados's expression was merely benignly complacent. Then he strolled across to the figure. "Very nice," he admitted. "Late Flemish, isn't it?" "No, it's a copy of Vidal's 'Roaring Lion.'" "Vidal?" "A French artist." The voice became indescribably flat. He, also, had the misfortune to be blind by the way. "You old humbug, Max!" shrieked Carlyle. "You've been thinking that out for the last 5 minutes." Then the unfortunate man bit his lip and turned his back towards his host. "Do you remember how we used to pile it up on that obtuse ass Saunders and then roast him?" asked Carrados, ignoring the half smothered exclamation with which the other man had recalled himself. "Yes," replied Carlyle quietly. "This is very good," he continued, addressing himself to the bronze again. "However did he do it?" "With his hands." "Naturally. But I mean, how did he study his model?" "Also with his hands. He called it 'seeing near.'" "Even with a lion? Handled it?" "In such cases he required the service of a keeper who brought the animal to bay while Vidal exercised his own particular gifts. You don't feel inclined to put me on the track of a mystery, Louis?" Unable to regard this request as anything but one of old Max's unquenchable pleasantries, Mr. Carlyle was on the point of making a suitable reply, when a sudden thought caused him to smile knowingly. Up to that point he had indeed completely forgotten the object of his visit. Now that he remembered the doubtful Dionysius and Baxter's recommendation, he immediately assumed that some mistake had been made. Either Max was not the Wynn Carrados he had been seeking, or else the dealer had been misinformed, for although his host was wonderfully expert in the face of his misfortune, it was inconceivable that he could decide the genuineness of a coin without seeing it. The opportunity seemed a good one of getting even with Carrados by taking him at his word. "Yes," he accordingly replied, with crisp deliberation, as he recrossed the room. "Yes, I will, Max. Here is the clue to what seems to be a rather remarkable fraud." He put the tetradrachm into his host's hand. "What do you make of it?" For a few seconds Carrados handled the piece with the delicate manipulation of his finger tips, while Carlyle looked on with a self appreciative grin. Then, with equal gravity, the blind man weighed the coin in the balance of his hand. Finally he touched it with his tongue. "Well?" demanded the other. "Of course I have not much to go on, and if I was more fully in your confidence I might come to another conclusion." "Yes, yes," interposed Carlyle, with amused encouragement. "Then I should advise you to arrest the parlour maid, Nina Brun, communicate with the police authorities of Padua for particulars of the career of Helene Brunesi, and suggest to Lord Seastoke that he should return to London to see what further depredations have been made in his cabinet." Mr. Carlyle's groping hand sought and found a chair, on to which he dropped blankly. His eyes were unable to detach themselves for a single moment